If the people of Scotland so desire, do you believe they have the right to become an independent nation? It's a simple democratic question.
I'll go to Drew.
Well, of course I do. I think the one of the things that we have been pursuing is to get a democratic solution to the question of independence and whether or not people want to take that forward. That's why we've had mandate after mandate where the SNP have had to hold a referendum on independence. It's only fair that people get to vote on this. Whether you're against independence, you can vote against it, obviously, and if you're for it, you can vote for it. And the situation has measurably changed since 2014. We've been evidently dragged out against our will from the European Union, and all of the damage that that's meant to our economy, to the increased red tape, to the higher food prices that we've got at the moment, because Scotland voted resolutely to remain in the European Union, and our needs were ignored. Our needs were ignored when the Scottish Government went with the document Scotland's Place in Europe to say, if you are going to do this stupid thing about Brexit, don't do it in this stupid way and work with us. And that was ignored as well. So those are very telling circumstances. But since then, we've also had the mini budget and other things like that, as has been referred to, the Truss mini budget and other things where decisions taken at Westminster have been disastrous for people. So, of course, they should have their choice. If we live in a democracy, people should be able to vote in a manifesto that says this is what we will deliver. And if that manifesto says there should be a vote, a referendum, that should be delivered for people. And it's inexcusable for the Tories or the Labour Party or the Lib Dems to deny people in Scotland the right to choose their own future, whatever that choice might be.
Peter.
I'm going to tell you a short story. In 2014, I voted no. I voted against independence. Really, because if you were keeping the pound and you were keeping the army and you were keeping the Queen, what was the point in going through the massive upheaval? And also because, Blackadder, shared culture, like sense of humour, there's a lot of history. And it just seemed like a big kind of hassle. And I don't think I've ever been more turned around on an issue in a shorter space of time than when David Cameron stood on the Downing Street with his big shiny forehead the next day and went, English votes for English laws, see how I fooled you? Not really. And I went, okay, fool me once. I have never been more turned around. And then you had just the insanity that is Brexit, where either way, Rory will come back and say most people voted for it, yakety, yakety, yak. 50% of your nations voted against it, and 50% of you voted for it. So you should have stuck with the status quo. And that's just common sense. And again, if you're going to do this silly thing in this damn silly way, here's a mitigation for you, that Sturgeon document. It was a very sensible compromise. It would have given David Cameron his big shiny face route out of it. But instead, his hubris and ego, he couldn't be seen to have done any sort of a deal with the SNP at all. And so now I'm absolutely convinced that you just have to go your own way. And I'm actually really interested because obviously poor Rory, he's the only unionist here and he's standing under his party and he's doing a really good job for fighting for what he believes, and that's cool. But what is it about the people of Scotland that the Tory party think makes them less capable of running themselves than the people of Burkina Faso or the people of Fiji or the people of Finland or the people what is it about us that makes us too stupid? Why can't we be independent? So the answer to the question is yes, I do think Scotland's been an independent country and thing, but I'd be really interested to know what is it about us that makes us, less capable.
Rudy.
Well, that's really interesting. I don't think that Scotland's too wee, too poor, too stupid. I think that's a trope that's been wheeled out, and I'm not even sure where it came from. I don't think at any point that's been the case. As Peter said, there's a lot of countries with smaller GDPs, with less performing services that are independent. That's not the question. Could Scotland be an independent country? Of course it could. The answer is, do the people of Scotland want Scotland to be an independent country? And the answer to that is no, I don't think so.
You could ask them.
Well, we did ask them, Drew, and they said no.
And then
we asked them in 2014, and they said no. And by and large, with the exception of the one odd outlier in the polls, the dial has not shifted an inch. there's a people that want Scottish independence, and that's their prerogative. There's people that don't want Scottish independence, and that's their prerogative. Without the exception of the odd outlier, that's not changed at all. There's still that gap. So there's no, in my view, there's no sort of willing to go and get Scottish independence at the moment. That's not what the priorities are. I've been chapping a number of doors recently, and when I've been hearing what people's priorities are, Scottish independence has not came up once. I think what we've got to do is focus on getting Scotland's public services back on track and make Scotland the best place to live and to work, because that's something that affects everybody. I think we've got to really focus on making what we've got work. We've got one of the most powerful and devolved administrations anywhere in the world, and I think what people would rather see than
not since the internal market
caused by independence, put this uncertainty to rest for a while, and get on with the day job and get on with making Scotland the best place that it can be. We don't.
But isn't it the best place in the UK to live anyway? Well, do you not think it is the best place in the UK to live?
Skye is the best place in the UK to live.
Good answer. But free tuition, free bus travel, free prescriptions. A national health service which is not as good as it should be, but as good as it probably can be. Is it not? It's a pretty special country. And the way that we, the community still exists and everything. And just imagine what we could do if we weren't being held back by a country that's going right as we're going left.
Well, I think free tuition is an interesting one because it does cap the number of Scottish students that can study at some of our top universities.
By the way, no one's ever been able to prove that. And I can tell you from helping, and I'll give you two things, because I've been a guidance teacher and done a lot of UCAS references and stuff. And I can tell you there is no demonstrable proof of that at all. The fees are the same. It's just the Scottish government pays them. So there is no cap. And believe me, I spoke to the Herald Education editor, and he was looking because he wanted that story and he couldn't find it. So that's a bit of a myth.
It's also true that more children in Scotland go on to university, college, or positive destinations than elsewhere in the UK per head of population.
Yeah.
So we have a success in terms of.
And we still venerate education in a way that the rest of the UK just doesn't, actually.
Yeah.
And I'd again, that's not. I'm not digging at Rory there. I think there's been a lot of stuff about education, but I think as a population, and particularly Highland, actually, I think we're still proud of educating our people well. And I think that is almost a bipartisan thing, actually. I think we're quite proud of that.
And we have some great teachers, classroom assistants, and other workers in the education system as well, contributing to that.
Okay, I've got one more question for you.
Sorry, I just need to interject for 1 minute there, Marie. Sorry, I need to push back a little bit on Drew there. I'll just be very soft with you. Drew, in 2016, when we were taken out of the EU against our will, tell me if I'm wrong here, but wasn't it in the SNP manifesto specifically said that if we was taken out of the EU against our will, we would have an independence referendum? So what's happened what's happened in the last 10 years? Why haven't we had a referendum, Drew?
Well, we did schedule a referendum, as you'll remember. That was due to go ahead, and then we had the COVID pandemic. At that time, it was postponed because of that pandemic. And then from there, we had the situation where we took it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that Westminster had the ability to stop it happening. So we're now at a situation where we're looking at this election to win this election, so that we can take forward negotiations for independence. And if necessary, we'll take the 2026 Scottish elections as a case to actually take that to the public as a vote to see Scotland, to judge Scotland's view to that as a kind of referendum for Scottish independence.
So you say Westminster has the ability to stop it. So we're going to ask for another Section 30 or something.
Well, certainly what the gold standard way of doing it would be for Westminster to do what they should do, which is agree to a Section 30, and that way we can have fully
they're not doing that,
recognised.
Drew. They haven't done for
Well,
years.
well, that's why we had the Supreme Court case that went there to see if we could do it on our own. The Supreme Court ruled that that wouldn't be legal. So therefore, we have to, on winning this election, we have to move forward with the negotiations for independence. And if necessary, we need to use the 2026 election as a vote on that prospectus for independence for Scotland.
If we are a sovereign nation, why do we need permission from Westminster? Just help our viewers out here, because I know that's a question I often get asked.
Well, because UK law is structured that way, and the fact that we've had to go to the Supreme Court, I believe it's wrong. I believe that we should have the sovereign right to call a referendum on our own, but the fact is that the Supreme Court has ruled against that. Which means that it's impossible for us to hold a referendum that would be internationally recognised. And it's absolutely vital that we get international recognition for Scotland to become an independent country, so that we can be seen as a legal entity and for that democratic vote to be recognised across the international community. Because just the issue of declaring independence is one thing. But unless you're doing that with a mandate, with a vote, with the support of the public, it's unlikely to be recognised internationally, and that's absolutely vital for the future.
Well, funnily enough, when Angus didn't show up earlier, I was saying to Marie earlier, it's like waiting for Angus is like waiting for Godot, and here we are, 10 years going around this circle. I mean, are you saying that the only way we can get independence in Scotland is through Westminster's permission?
No, clearly what I'm saying is that we have to make sure that we're trying to do this in a legal, internationally recognised way that shows the support of the public in a democratic vote, so that can be upheld as a standard that everybody has agreed to. So democracy means that you have to get a majority of the public to support that proposition, and we have to have a vote which is updated on 2014 to do that. Now, despite mandate after mandate for the SNP winning election after election to take that forward, the Tory party have refused to recognise that mandate and have said, no, it's not for today, we're not going to do it, all of these things. So when we tried to take forward that referendum that you were talking about earlier, there was the pandemic that came in the way, and then there was the Supreme Court action, because we wanted to clarify after that we could take that referendum forward. The Supreme Court has ruled against us, so we need to now look at a different mechanism to see how we can get the public support demonstrated in a democratic vote to allow us to become an independent country. So the ideal way for that is after the Westminster election for us to get the agreement of the new government to have a Section 30, to have another referendum that is like the 2014 referendum, which is legally recognised and internationally stamped. If that is refused, then we have to look at other democratic methods to exercise our right to choose in Scotland. And one of those would be taking that forward to the 2026 Scottish parliamentary elections.